Hey everybody, welcome back to StadiaCast, your source for all things Stadia. I'm Bill, that's Lloyd. What's up, Lloyd?
Not much, man. It feels weird to be doing it in middle of the week, not the weekend, but it's going well, man. It's Stadia's inching ever closer. It's now September. We're 1 month closer to launch, and based on what's been happening out there in PAX land, I am getting really excited for Google Stadia.
Absolutely. Before you know it, it's going to be sneaking up behind us, and we're going to have that controller on our hot little hands and playing it. But before we get into all of that PAX stuff, before we bring you all of the craziness that is happening here on StadiaCast, we just want to say that we normally record the show live Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. Now, I am premiering this episode over at youtube.com/StadiaCast live at Sunday morning at 10 a.m. And I will probably be in chat, chatting with the people who are watching this live Sunday morning at 10 a.m. over at youtube.com/StadiaCast. However, there's a reason that we didn't record this show live. And you want to tell everybody what the reason is, Lloyd?
Well, Bill, you know, they say you should never meet your heroes.
And you shouldn't eat your heroes either.
You definitely, unless it's a hero sandwich, because those are tasty.
Oh, that sounds good.
You should never meet your heroes. But Bill, I wasn't able to be there, but you met your superhero today and did a nice little interview with.
That's right.
John Justice.
John Justice, superhero John Justice, joined us on an episode of StadiaCast. I couldn't believe it. I was getting ready to, we didn't have an episode last Sunday because I was at Dragon Con, and we're not having an episode live this Sunday because Lloyd is having a giant party at his house, apparently, and he didn't even invite me, but that's okay.
You were. It's just a really long drive for you, Bill.
It is, and I'm all traveled out because I just got back from Dragon Con. But I got an email and I sent immediately I messaged Lloyd and I was like, Lloyd, I just got this email. Do you think this is real? And it was basically, it was Google saying, hey, we want vice president and, oh gosh, it's not on my screen right now. Let me bring it back up. I can't remember it. Vice president and head of product for Stadia, John Justice, wants to be on the show. And I was like, Lloyd, do we tell people and get their questions? And Lloyd was very smart, and he said, no, don't do that, because what if something happens and you can't record the show? Then you've let everybody down. And I've already been accused of faking things once with Nintendo. I don't want to be accused of faking things with Google. So we decided not to tell anybody until we actually recorded it. And Lloyd and I were going to record together with John Justice, but Lloyd's work exploded, I guess.
Something like that. Yeah, there was some major issues which tied me up for the after work time when I should have been driving home like a giddy little child to do this interview.
Well, anyway, John and I had a great conversation. He's a really nice guy, and I think he's a bit of a retro gamer. I didn't spend any time really getting to know John because I was like, Stadia question, like nonstop bullet firing at him. But maybe in the future when he comes on again, hopefully, knock on wood, when he comes on again, we'll get to know him a little bit better. But I had a ton of questions that Lloyd and I wrote and we asked, and Lloyd and I are going to talk a little bit about PAX, and then you guys can hear all about our interview with John Justice, who has clearly the coolest name ever. And he also said on the interview that if you guys want changes to happen to Stadia, write to us here at StadiaCast, because Google is listening to this podcast and they have like a whiteboard just waiting for your ideas. So there you go. You want to talk about PAX, Lloyd?
Sure, man. I've always wanted to go to a PAX. The problem with being a Canadian and having to fly down to conferences like this is it's far too expensive. But this would have been the PAX to go to because Google was there. They were showing off Stadia. They were showing off Stadia in probably the worst environment that you probably could, with so many different pods going through one pipe to the internet. And all of the impressions that I heard online, on Twitter, on Reddit, on you name it, all the articles, a PC World article I just read earlier today said that it went off without a hitch, which is amazing when you have this many computers that are all tied into one line, going to the internet, streaming all these games directly through these really bad environments. Like this is the worst case scenario for that type of demo, and it went off without a hitch. People were playing Doom Eternal, they were playing Mortal Kombat 11. These are games that you can't fake. They are Twitch. There's like a Twitch shooter and a fighting game. You can't fake and get around latency with these games. If there's latency, you're gonna feel it, you're gonna see it. And it was glowing praise coming from everybody that had a chance to check this out. So if it was possible, my hype for Stadia was just ratcheted up just a little bit.
There was a couple of YouTube videos from people who were at PAX, and they had OBS running on the computers there, and they were recording the software. They were recording these people playing Doom Eternal, and then obviously they threw it on a thumb drive and took it with them. But I was watching this stuff, and man, it looked great. And one of the people said that the only thing that they really noticed was there was a moment where it took like 5 seconds for the textures to load in, but he seemed to think that that was really more to do with the game than
100%.
with Stadia, because that kind of thing, like when I guess, how do I explain? I'm sure that you've played a game before, listener, where like the game looks kind of blurry for a second, and then the textures load onto the character after a moment. I guess a really good example for that would be Paladins on the Nintendo Switch. When you first turn that game on, everything looks really blurry, and then the textures load in, and then it looks fine. That's kind of what he was seeing. It wasn't artifacting from low resolution or anything like that. And he said that there were no problems. It was great, and he noticed that same texture problem in the 2016 version of Doom when he played that on a PC. So that's really seems to be more of a problem with the game itself rather than with Stadia.
100%, because all that texture loading is happening on the cloud. It's happening in the cloud. So the blade is trying to load that stuff into memory, into the GPU, make your frame, compress that frame, and send it over the internet. So it's not Stadia, the transport of Stadia, that's being an issue. It's just the engine itself is having problems loading that. And you're probably, if it's happening on Stadia, you're probably going to see that same issue on other hardware as they get that game ready for launch, because it is not a game that is out yet. So hopefully all that stuff will be cleaned up before it launches on Stadia and all the other platforms it's coming out on.
So I saw this article over at GameIndustry.biz, and I thought it was pretty interesting. And I wish that I had sent it to you, but Ray Bautista, I think I said it right. I could be wrong. He works for Google. And, you and I actually talked about this in the past, what's going on with the way that whether or not Stadia should be a curated store like we'll say PlayStation or Xbox or Nintendo, or whether it should be Wild West like Steam. And this article says that Stadia is basically, they're moving away from that Wild West that exists in storefronts today. Here's the quote itself. It says, it was important for us with Stadia that we moved away from the Wild West that exists in some storefronts today. Bautista said, speaking at the GameIndustry.biz investment summit at PAX Dev, just because a studio has a game idea doesn't mean we're going to allow them to publish that game. Although sometimes when they publish a game, it's a punishment for the players. It depends on what the game is. Just because a developer or publisher releases a game that was a success, we certainly aren't going to allow 10, 20, 50 fast follows to come in after that. It's important to us that we are looking at every single piece of content that comes on to our platform to really help spotlight developers, showcase the talented developers and content that's coming out, and more importantly, make sure that we're proud of the content that's being released on our platform. What do you think of that, Lloyd?
I think that's really the way to go, at least to start. they can start that way, so that when someone jumps onto the Stadia website, they say, okay, well, there's this game, there's this game, there's this game. I know all of these properties, I know all of these games. Not like having 100 games where someone downloaded some game creation studio and just made multiple copies of I don't know, whatever your platformer of choice would be. That type of stuff is pretty common on like the Android App Store and the iOS App Store, where there's just so many products and they're not all of high quality. There's more there's more chaff than wheat, and having a curation happening at least at the start. Maybe they can loosen it a little bit as the platform matures. Is just going to be good for the consumer, and it's going to be good for Google themselves.
Absolutely. He went on to say a little bit more. He said he basically said, "Look, there's 4,000 developers have applied to get their games on Stadia, and for the developers, if you want your game to stand out, you should probably make sure that you're using Stadia centric features." Here's the actual quote that he said: "Looking at these features, consider what being on a cloud-based platform means to your overall game design, and ask what kind of projects they can make that aren't possible on other platforms. Those are the kind of games that Google is most interested in." And honestly, for me, that those are the games that I'm most interested in. I've said this on the show many times. I'm excited for Stadia, but what I'm really excited for Stadia for is this idea of games that can only be played in the cloud because something isn't possible any other way. You
Yeah.
know, every single NPC having its own AI routine, because that's something that Google has talked about, that they can have all of this AI stuff just off on its own, and then anytime that you need an NPC to have an AI routine, they can go out and grab one and import just that thing for just that character, making each character feel a little more realistic.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. Getting more of those games at launch is just going to really show off what the platform is. Other companies do that. Nintendo, for example, when they came out with the Wii, all the games at launch had some sort of waggle control, and it's like motion gaming. Here you go, it's here to stay. The Switch, it was okay. The Joy-Con, you can have 8-player games with the Joy-Con sideways. It's really showing off kind of the strengths of the platform. Google having things like that, having deep AI, having a battle royale that has 500 players, like things that can't be done on a modern console would be great. What Ghost Recon is doing with your multiplayer, having individual streamed windows of that multiplayer game happening. You can't do that on standard consoles right now. Things like that are going to be where you get all the articles, where or all the Google juice is going to come from, which is funny because it's from Google, but that is what's really going to generate the hype and get people talking, and I'm really excited to see a lot of those products.
While I'm excited to see some of those products, I also want to caution developers to make sure that when they do something like this, that they do a good job, because we
Yep.
also, you mentioned the waggle. There were a
Hmm.
lot of games on Wii that the only reason that they were on Wii was because they featured the waggle and Nintendo said okay, and they just really weren't very good games. So
Yep.
just because you're featuring these things that can only be done on Stadia, make sure that whatever you're doing outside of that one feature is a good game. And I don't know if any developers are listening. We know Google's listening, but I don't know if any developers are listening. You can't just be one note with this. You've got to nail it. You've got to nail
That's
it,
right.
and you've got to nail it on the first try, because most of the time you don't get a second try. There's too many other games out there that can get our attention. And if
Hmm.
that means that you aren't a launch game for Stadia, then I think personally, I would rather have a game that gets delayed and doesn't come out right away. And later on, when it comes out, we're like, oh my God, how did they ever
Yeah.
do this? This is amazing.
Yeah, I agree. Like the Miyamoto quote is a delayed game is eventually good. A rush game is bad forever. That's the same sort of thing with Stadia. If you're just rushing out a shovelware thing, and because you want to have all the different bits that make Stadia unique, you're not releasing a good game with that stuff in it. You're just releasing something with that stuff in it. So yeah, it'll be interesting, man. I'm super excited for launch. I want to see the games that we don't know about. that get announced between now and when the Founders Edition comes out. Because I think there's going to be so many experiences that we're going to see them and are going to be like, yeah, of course, this should be here. Why didn't we think about that? And there's going to be a lot of those moments as they get stuff ready for launch and for the official public release.
And I have to say, I can't wait for those moments where they announce a game and we're like, oh my God, how is it that we didn't anticipate that this kind of game would come to Stadia, or that this would that this kind of thing would be possible on Stadia or cloud gaming in general. I'm really looking forward to that hindsight is 2020 moment where you're like, we should have saw this coming.
Yeah, that's always the fun thing. Like someone that like I've been podcasting for over a decade. I've been following multiple industries for this time, and it's always amazing when you get surprised, because it's like I've seen this play out so many times, and someone did it different, and it's like, okay, applause for that company or that system or whatever. So yeah, I'm really excited for this birth of really a new era of gaming. Like this whole streaming future is what we're going to be experiencing over the next, I don't know, 5 years, as different companies start rolling out whatever their solution is. And it's quite exciting for someone that's been a lifelong gamer to see this new type of gaming kind of, I don't know, get born right in front of us.
All right. Well, you've heard me and Lloyd talk a whole bunch about stuff, and we all know that you're just putting up with our nonsense to get to superhero John Justice and everything that he had to say in the StadiaCast interview with him. There were a couple of things that he said that were basically exclusives, so make sure that you hang out. We're going to listen to our sponsors real quick, and when we come back, our interview with John Justice, VP over at Google. Stick around.
Color? Introducing Game Gear from Sega. The full-color portable video game system that separates the men from the boys. Game Gear from Sega.
Hello, John.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How about you, sir?
I'm doing well. Good to be talking to you. I've heard you on the podcast a lot.
So you've listened to the podcast?
I have listened. I've listened to, I might have missed one or two, but
Wow.
I've listened to quite a bit. I was actually just listening to the last one, and I heard that I'm a superhero.
So that is exactly what I was going to ask you, is because when I got the email, I said to Lloyd, I go, oh my God, John Justice wants to be on the show, and he goes, we found his bat signal.
Oh, clearly, or Commissioner Gordon did somewhere on there, but I don't know, what would that be? Like find like a I don't know, original Ness or something like that, and tap out a rhythm. I'm not sure what the signal would be, but.
Awesome. So I know that first off, thank you so much for being on the show. It is amazing that you guys wanted to come on, and I really appreciate it. And I know how cramped your time must be right now with launching the show launching Stadia in November. So you have a hard out at 6:45 or 3:45, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so I'm just going to get right into the questions, and first off, I've got a couple of questions about the Founders Edition.
Yeah.
First off, the Buddy Pass coming within 6 months. There seems to be some confusion about that. Can you explain what's going on with that?
Oh yeah, we'll very likely give them out a whole lot sooner than that. That's I think that was the finest of the fine print on there, which is in case for some reason we needed to delay it a whole lot more than we intend to, we could do it at latest at 6 months. But I think instead we'll likely be giving them out after about 2 weeks.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Will you, does the Stadia controller have gyro for motion controls?
It doesn't. It's got rumble. It's got the analog triggers. It's got the luscious D-pad on there for rolling your combos, but no gyro.
No gyro. Okay, that's. Is there a reason you guys left that out?
It's not something that the early game developers we were talking to asked for, so it's something we can we want to make sure we're supporting what they want. It just wasn't high up on the list. And something that's, if you add something like gyro, anything you add adds cost. And so if you keep adding a bunch of things, if you don't have games lined up to use them, or people aren't asking for them for their games, then it could make the cost of the thing higher, and we want to get it out to as many people as we can.
That makes a lot of sense. That's probably why you don't have the paddles on the back as well.
Oh yeah, the extra paddles, and that's something that some people like, having extra paddles for the things like the Pro style controllers. Scuff has it on some of theirs. There's the Xbox makes a $200 controller that has them, but they're for particular play styles. And if you really like them, people can use them, because Stadia works with any controller you bring. Just about, we work with anything that's HID compliant. Then you can bring a controller like that if you want to.
So I guess what my next question then would be, if I brought that HID, is there anything in Stadia that allows me to set like that paddle button to do something on Stadia? Does that make sense?
Yeah, usually for those things, you map using software that's specific to the controller. Like you go get something
right.
And this works for Pro style controllers. It also works for adaptive controllers. So something like the Microsoft adaptive controllers. I think it's a really cool thing. It lets a lot of people play games who couldn't play normally. With that, it's got some software on its own that you set up. Hey, map this to this, this to this. And then those show up as regular button presses out to everything you plug it into. And so we just work along with that. Within Stadia as well, because we want to have good accessibility support, you can also go into the games, and we make sure the games let you do remapping there. But that's remapping of things like this button to this trigger, that sort of thing, which is different than that kind of, I have extra buttons or extra something or a different way of doing it, and I want to map those to standard buttons. Usually those things like Pro controllers or adaptive controller, you do that outside.
So, that's awesome, because one of my biggest complaints about Nintendo is the fact that they don't let me remap a lot of the buttons in their games. Is this something that Stadia is going to require all developers to do, to say, make sure that for accessibility issues, you can remap buttons?
We're working with it. We're trying to get it across everything. We're trying to get it across all the games coming on. I won't say, hey, it's 100% guaranteed that every single one will get it, but we're trying. It's something that we know helps with accessibility, and so it's important to us. We try to do everything we can to let everyone get access, so that fits right along with that.
Speaking of of controllers. Yeah. Is there going to be like Stadia Wi-Fi keyboards and mouse that are going to come later, or are you guys focusing solely on the controller, and then keyboards and mouse is just going to be something that people do on their own?
We don't have a way to do it right now on kind of the cloud version of a keyboard and mouse. I think it's something that it'll be good to have. Sometimes I like playing gamepad. Sometimes I like playing mouse and keyboard. And when you play on a laptop, a Chromebook, PC, Mac, whatever, when you're doing that, you can just plug in any keyboard, mouse you want, or controller you want. But if you're playing on something like a Chromecast on your big screen, or kind of a cast-enabled TV and those kinds of things that will support more and more of those in the future, for that, there isn't a good way to connect a keyboard to that thing. And so cloud-based setup somehow for mouse and keyboard, it'd be really good to have there. We don't have anything yet, but it's something that I'm thinking about.
Awesome. So I've got a bunch of uncategorized stuff that questions. Is Stadia going to allow people to try games before they buy them, kind of like a temporary unlock, or like a 30 to 60 minute demo or something like that?
Yeah, so we will have trials. We're not going to have trials it'll be a few months until they actually go out. I don't know that I've mentioned this to anyone yet, so you might be the first. But yeah, we will be adding trials. We're just working through what's the right when and how exactly set it up. And you can imagine how busy things are now, just getting ready for launch. So there's the launch stuff, and then there's, okay, what do we want to do next after? And so trials is something that's high up on the list.
So I guess I want to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying. When you say trials, are you talking about trials for people who aren't sure about trying Stadia, or people who are Stadia customers who want to try out a specific game before they buy it?
Both, really.
Oh,
Because
okay.
I think if you look at our plan to make as many people be able to try this as possible, you want people, whether they're already on Stadia, to let them go discover new games, new things, stuff you haven't tried. And then also people who, if you haven't given it a try, we want to let you just jump in as easily as you can. So I think both of those things are trials that we want to support.
Now, this is probably the most popular question that people are asking,
All right.
that I feel like I haven't seen an answer to yet, or I feel like the attempt to answer the question wasn't quite clear enough. So,
Yeah.
do you have to have a pro account in order to access games that are free to play, like Fortnite or Apex Legends, that kind of game? This is a hugely popular question. I think a lot of people they just want to nail it down.
Yeah, I understand people are asking about it. We haven't launched any of those games yet. And so when we launch them, you'll be the first to know.
Okay. We'll be the first to know right here on StadiaCast.
There you go. All right.
Fair enough. Do you have to let's say Uplay Plus? Like, what if I subscribe to Uplay, and then I switch over to Stadia? Do I have to have a pro account with Stadia in order to subscribe to Uplay through Stadia? If that makes sense.
For us, Uplay Plus is coming next year, so it's coming in 2020, and we are working out with Ubisoft exactly how we're going to roll it out and exactly what we'll say about it. And so we're not there yet. So this is another one that we're going to have to talk about this in a few months.
Yeah. Anytime there's a question, just feel free to punt it down the line. We can always have another interview later on when you're ready to talk about this stuff.
Yeah, that's one that we're going to have to get closer to the Uplay Plus launch on Stadia before we'll go announce all of that stuff.
Fair enough. How does family sharing work on Stadia? If I buy a game, does my son, who lives in the same house with me, also have access to the game? And what restrictions are there?
Well, I see that's a trick question there, because family sharing doesn't come out yet. So family sharing will come out. It's going to come out, looks like early in 2020 we'll be able to have that, but we're still working on the exact kind of things. I don't think I've actually talked about when that stuff's coming out before, so this is new. But we're working on that, and we're working out what the details are. The spirit of it is you want to be able to go share the experiences. You want to be able to go you want to be able to play with your friends as much as possible and let them try things. We're actually still nailing down exactly how it's going to work. Part of that involves working with the game developers and publishers about that side. So we're working on that a lot now. It'll be nailed down in the next few months, and then we'll get ready to talk about it probably just beginning of the year, because then we'll have it nailed down enough to be able to talk about it, and then probably a few months later roll it out.
All right. I got some questions. I'm a Twitch streamer, and I love streaming, and I look at Stadia as this way to make it so that anybody can be a streamer without having to go through the ridiculous expense of building a machine that can handle doing it, which I think is very exciting, especially because my son wants to stream, and I told him, well, you're gonna have to wait, buddy, because I don't want to spend all that money. And when Stadia happens, maybe he'll be able to stream. So
it looks like you got a nice setup there right now.
I do. My wife is very nice to me.
I bet. That's great.
So my question is, when you're watching streamers that are on Twitch or Mixer or currently on YouTube, currently they can have overlays and cameras so that you can see the streamer and maybe alerts when people subscribe. How will Stadia allow people to do that as well? How will that work?
Yeah, I think I'm getting into some stuff that we'll do more about later. I can give you the early thinking on how we're going on it now. On one side, there are a lot of things that we're doing to make it easy to interact with people playing games when you're watching a stream. But there are also things that we're doing to make it easier for you to go stream, and that we think should broaden the number of people who can do it. If you're doing things that are more on the advanced side, if you're the kind of person who, I'm guessing you've got an OBS set up and you probably have that, it looks like you've got a Rode kind of thing. I'm not sure what mic you're using underneath that screen, but it looks,
it's expensive.
Yeah, you got to, that's running through a preamp. You got a whole setup here. In that case, we're more interested in plugging into that world in a good way than in replacing it. And so going and fitting into your workflow, because we're not trying to say, hey, go throw out everything that you have. Instead, we want to go plug into the stuff that you have for the people who are high end, folks like you who already have you have all the stuff set up. So we're not going to try to go recreate every single part of OBS and everything else inside Stadia. Instead, you can think about that as there's a breadth experience, and then you can go plug into the higher end stuff if you're a higher end streamer.
So will people be streaming on Stadia.com, or will they be streaming on YouTube?
YouTube.
Okay, so everybody would be streaming on YouTube. So I essentially would take my Chromecast and plug it into where my current console is, and then stream that way. Is that what you're saying?
Well, there are a couple differences here. First, you could always just stream the way you do now, just play on the Chromecast and go record it, but you won't get the best quality.
Right.
Instead, because we can go run everything at full detail, instead what we're looking at is how do we go take the server side version of the video that never has to go down the internet and back. Instead, take that and then let you use that as the basis of your stream. Because we can keep that thing at full quality. We can even spend a little bit more time compressing it, a little bit, put some extra polish on it because it doesn't have to be quite as fast. So we can do some good stuff there. And that way it can be a lot higher quality than anything that you could easily do today in real time. Because we have big compression hardware up there that can do that.
Very cool. So basically I would send like my camera and my audio to Google, and then you guys would put them all together on Stadia and then send that to YouTube.
We're looking at right now. We think that we can do that, and that'll let us keep kind of pristine 4K hardware or 4K kind of streams with HDR and everything else like that, and then be able to go keep it maximal quality, which should let us be a lot higher quality than anyone can do today.
Awesome. That sounds great. Will the Stadia Store allow things like wish lists or sale notifications, which I think is a big mistake that a lot of people don't do, is allowing us to add something to a wish list and then saying, hey, this is on sale, or gifting? Like, is that kind of stuff going to be in the store?
Actually, let me flip it over to you, because you hear from your listeners. You've been paying a lot of attention to it. I actually... if I turn the camera right now, you would see a whiteboard full of prioritized features that we're working through on here. Not actually going to do that, but instead, what I'm going to do is I'd want to hear from you, and I want to hear from your listeners about what are the things that they want, and what do you think the order should be, and then I'll go use that and plug it in.
Awesome. So basically, write in what you guys want to happen to our show. We'll talk about it on the show. John will listen, and he'll write it on his whiteboard and then make it happen. Yeah,
pretty much. It's just magic. It comes out the other end. I'm pretty sure that the development gets done the next day.
Exactly.
Kidding. And actually, another place that we often look over there is there's a Stadia subreddit, and there's a bunch of good stuff on there. And so doing a thread on there about, hey, what are the features you're most interested in this area? That's great. It's really helpful to get that kind of feedback.
The reactions from people who've tried Stadia at conventions like Gamescom and then most recently PAX, they've all been pretty, like, you guys must be pretty happy about what people are saying. Can you talk about what the connection that you guys had was like? Because a lot of people are saying, well, it's a wonderful environment, everything's hardwired. Can you talk about what that connection was like to the individual Chromebooks that people were playing Doom Eternal on?
Yeah, I think people saying that the connection is great have never worked at a convention. It's the convention logistics and internet are pretty challenging to get there. So we had, let's see, I think we shot for having 25 megabit per station at Gamescom, and we were a bit under that at PAX. So that was, that's the general amount that we had, but actually you don't always get all of that bandwidth when you're at a convention, and we didn't always get all of that bandwidth at either one. So that was something that we were looking and seeing, hey, is everything going to scale gracefully? And it did, which was great. We're seeing that, it's something new and different. Getting hands-on is the biggest thing for people. Getting to try it, it just makes such a huge difference. So getting the time to setting it up at Gamescom, setting it up at PAX, those are big things for us to just get it in as many people's hands as possible, because it's something that's so different. It can be hard to believe that it really works well until you go and try it.
Yeah, I completely understand that, and I can't wait to try it myself.
Have you had a chance yet?
I have not. I live in the middle of nowhere, and this past weekend I went to Dragon Con for podcasting stuff. And it wasn't at, please tell me it wasn't at Dragon Con, was it?
No.
Okay, good. Because
we visited Gamescom and PAX West so far.
Right, okay. I would have been really upset if it was there and I didn't see it through all the cosplay. How granular are parental controls on Stadia? Am I going to be able to set time limits as well as like rating limits? Will I be able to whitelist games for my kids?
Yeah. So we look at it as a service, so Google style. So we look at, okay, we are rolling out this and this and this and this and this. Mm-hmm. So my answer is pretty different for what's going to be there on day one, what's going to be there six months in. One place you can get a good start is looking at the Google Parental Controls all up. If you go look into there's Google Family Support, and that lets you do a lot of kind of delegated approval, and there are a lot of cool features there. If you look, that's the basis of the stuff that we're building on. So that's a really good place to see kind of the core features that we'll have. The start of the family controls there, I'm trying to think whether we'll have time limits on day one or not. They might not be there on day one. It might be a month or two later. But if you look at the regular family controls that Google has, which are pretty good, that's where we're going to start from. And then we'll be adding a bunch more. This is another area where it'd be great to hear from people about what they want, what's most important to them. We take family controls, we take trust and safety really seriously, working on machine learning, for working on abuse prevention, those kinds of things. There's a lot that we do. I still find it super helpful if we get feedback from people about, hey, this is what I'm looking for the most. This is what's most important. So I'll put that to your readers to help us decide the right order of some of these features. I'd love to hear what's most important.
Awesome. So there you go, guys. Make sure that you send in information for John. This is another super popular question that a lot of people have been asking.
Yeah.
Will Stadia allow mods? So like for Skyrim, for example, if there's a Skyrim game, will we be able to mod that game like we can on PC?
So you can Fusroda in some new and different way.
Exactly.
So that's our intention. We're working with developers now to how do we go do it? It will be different than depending on the game, but we're working out how to support mods. It's something that for some games it looks like it's going to be pretty straightforward. For others, it's a bit more difficult. Part of it is you have to run within a certain kind of sandbox, and we have to make sure there's a good way of fitting in there and making sure that there's good kind of safety and review of those things. But it's something that it's on our list.
Is there any way to import save files from PC or whatever? I know that you guys are all about cross-play, but what about cross-progression for games that might not necessarily be like an online multiplayer style game?
Yeah, we are trying to do that with every single title we're bringing to Stadia. So that's something that we see it as a key piece of next gen. So we're trying to go push that, hey, next gen is all about openness. It's about being able to play across your friends groups. It's about taking down these walled gardens. It's about being able to keep your progression wherever it is you are. So something like something like a really big game of, well, you choose the one that you played with. So something like, say, Skyrim. If Skyrim, if you imagine it's on there, I think you play those games almost as a lifestyle. It takes a
You
long
do. You get
time,
sucked
you
in.
know? Yeah, I think about how many hours I've sunk in some different things. And so you look at it, whether it's a single player or multiplayer, you want to keep that progress going. So we're trying to get that everywhere. Not every game platform is wholly on board with this, and some of them are on board with it for some titles and not for others. So we are pushing it forward. We're working with developers, and we're trying to move the rest of the game platforms there.
Awesome. So it's basically depending on game by game. It's
Yeah.
on the developers to decide if that's something that they want to do for their customers.
We are pushing them pretty seriously. If they've got a really good reason not to do it, I think we'd listen to them and talk to them about it. But it's something that by default we want everywhere. And so far, the developers they're pretty open to it. They're interested in that. They see it. The one place where we've got to work out some details, there's some places where some platforms there might be more cheating than on others. And so working out, hey, are you going to go accept save files from that place where everybody modifies them, those kinds of things. So we're working out that for whether this mattered more for multiplayer than anything else.
Right.
But especially for multiplayer games, how do we handle imports in those cases? So there are some places where we're in conversation there, but generally we're looking for cross-play, cross-progression, and cross everything.
Awesome. What kind of battery can we expect from the controller?
The controller, let's see, after the current life, I charge mine up about, I don't know, a week or so. Let's see.
Okay.
I tend to charge it. I play all the systems.
Well, is it better than the PS4 controller, but not as good as the Switch controller?
I think I tend to charge mine. Let's see, probably less than my PS4, and I don't think anything lasts as long as the Switch controller.
No, I don't think so. I don't know what kind of magic they did with the batteries in that thing, but
there's a huge battery in that. I couldn't tell you what the exact life of it is, but I don't have to charge it all that often.
fair enough. I guess we've only got a couple of minutes left. Will there be another Kinect before the launch?
I think you can always count on another Kinect coming. So there's definitely one coming. When exactly it's coming, of course we'll announce it.
All right. And what's the last? Here's my last question, and then I will let you go do your job. What is the biggest piece of disinformation out there about Stadia, and make it right?
Oh, okay. I think. Let's see. I think there are probably a couple things that I've heard people get confused about. One was there was the whole thing about, is it Netflix of games or not? And that means so many things to so many people that it's hard to disentangle that. So I think that one is, hey, we know a lot of people want subscriptions for games, and so we will support that. We'll work with Ubisoft. We'll go work with other folks. We'll go have our own where we can go bring games every month. And also, a lot of people want to be able to just buy the games and go. So we are also supporting that. We're also supporting regular store where you can just buy and play. We're supporting both models. So that's something we know you don't make everyone happy by only having one of them. So we know we have to have both models. So we do that. I think the other big thing is in just the conversation about Pro. When I look at it, it's a pretty disruptive thing that normally I've got to go buy a high-end console, or I've got to go buy a gaming PC, or playing on more than one screen, I buy more than one. And that whole layer, the whole hardware there, and for us, it's better hardware than you can buy in a console today, by a lot. We're giving all that for free. And so that's a pretty cool disruptive thing out there. So that's just coming along. And so the pro subscription, and think about it more as it adds some extra features. It's an optional thing that adds some extra features, just like PS Plus or Live Gold. Either of those, they add some games, they add some extra features. We do something different here too, that not only do we give you kind of the hardware layer and we don't make you pay for that, but we also don't block multiplayer. And so we'll let you do multiplayer on that as well. So that's something that where I think a lot of people haven't quite gotten that before, probably because we're only doing the founders thing now, and the founders thing, you kind of have to get everything all at once.
Right.
But I've gotten a lot of questions about that.
All right. I lied. I have one more question.
Yeah.
You brought up, huh?
And then I'm really gonna have to run.
I know. You brought up the pro subscription thing. That costs $10 a month. Are you going to sell a cheaper version if you buy the whole year?
Buy the whole year. I don't have plans for it yet. Okay. Is that something you want?
I think without a doubt that's something that people would want. All
right. Cool. Have your listeners, have your viewers, have them go send the feedback about what do they want. Add over into the particularly in the Stadia subreddit. Be great to see.
Well, John, thank you so much for coming on the show. John Justice, VP and Head of Product over at Google Stadia. Thank you very much for coming on the show, man.
Really good talking to you. Have a good one.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, that is it for StadiaCast this week. Thank you guys so much for listening. We really appreciate it. And again, thank you to John Justice for being on the show. If you want to follow the show on Twitter, you can follow us over at StadiaCast on Twitter. You can follow me at Run Jump Stomp. You can follow Lloyd at
Dasme, DASME.
And when you follow us, if you're going to tweet at us, make sure you use that hashtag StadiaCast so we can find your tweets, because we've got other shows. Speaking of other shows, Lloyd, what other shows do you have, sir?
Well, I do a weekly, twice a week Nintendo news show called Nintendo Pulse. You can check that out over at res.tv. There's other shows on the network as well. Some of them gaming related, some not, but you can check all that stuff out at res.tv, REZD-TV.
And you can check out all of my shows over at runjumpstomp.com/shows. I host Nintendo Switchcraft as well as, well, yeah, this one too. It's just Nintendo Switchcraft for now. I ended up taking Run Jump Stomp down, but that's okay. Join our Discord. We've got the Stadia desk. We've got our Discord over at runjumpstomp.com/Discord. And while you're already joining Discords, Lloyd's got one that you can join too. You can find his over at res.tv/Discord. The music that you are about to hear is Subterranean Kamikaze by Zircon. Make sure you check out their stuff at zirconstudios.bandcamp.com. We will see you later. Bye, Lloyd.
See ya.